Hey guys, and welcome to part 2 of my Ask Fleur video about exams. If you haven't watched part 1 already, I'll link it here so you guys can go and check it out. This part of the video is going to be more about the actual exam itself and kind of the process of taking exams rather than the revision side of things. So I'm going to jump right into it. I've got 5 questions. The first one is from Emmy, or Cyber Sparrow, on Twitter. And she says, do you find cramming right before an exam helped or impeded your performance on the exam? Personally, I'm a really quite organised person when it comes to exams, so I've never crammed for an exam and not done any long-standing revision before. If you guys are watching from outside the UK, there is a bit of a difference in the school system. Pretty much the whole of our grades that go onto our CV for the rest of our lives are from exams. There's a certain portion coursework, but we don't get graded in terms of our performance in class throughout the year. We don't have a grade point average like you do in the States, or I'm not sure how everyone in the world school system works, but in the UK it's very, very exam based. So I feel like if you were in the States you might be able to get away with cramming a little bit more because the exams aren't quite as important. They don't have as much weight as they do in England. But for me, I know that I would rather kind of, if I'm gonna slack, it wouldn't be during revision time, it would be during term time, and then I have a month or 3 weeks before the exam where I really, really study hard. So yeah, I don't really cram. Having said that, I do revise right up to the last minute. So the night before the exam, I used to have flashcards, and I would go through all the flashcards of the main points and just kind of make sure I knew them. And the thing is, when you're cramming the night before, I feel not much of it goes in because you're kind of in a bit of a panic state. So you're oh, I need to learn this, I need to learn this. And the more you kind of try and force your brain to remember something, I feel it doesn't work as well. It's more about kind of building knowledge that as a whole that you kind of hold on to, and you know, even if you don't recall it instantly, it's kind of at the back of your mind. So if you're writing, say, an extended answer to a question or an essay, you might write a point and then another point will come to you being oh yeah, I remember he said that, because you've actually done a work over a long period of time rather than trying to remember points at the last minute. So cramming has a place, definitely. For less important tests, I definitely crammed and didn't revise a week before, but it's not the way to go, guys. It's not the way to go. Okay, number 2, Nancy Duncanson from Facebook asks, can you talk about how to overcome test anxiety and fatigue during the exam? I have a 4-hour standardised exam for grad school that I'm taking in June for the 4th time, and I know the material, but it's hard to focus for 4 hours at high intensity when they videotape you in the exam to prevent cheating. That was a long question, sorry guys. I've actually never had them videotape an exam, I don't think, but I have had very, very long exams. I don't think I've had a 4-hour one. I think my longest at university was 3.5 hours. And it is really, really hard to stay focused because it's such a long exam. 3.5 hours or 4 hours is a long time to be concentrating on the same thing and not have a break and go outside and get some fresh air or whatever. The best thing I find is make sure you have water with you. I know that's a really obvious thing for long exams, take in a bottle of water. If you think you need a bit more energy, maybe take in a juice or something if you can. I know different exams have different guidelines of what you can have in clear bottles, but pretty much they'll let you take in juice if you take the label off and whatever. So I find that really helps if you need kind of a boost of energy. Definitely take snacks. So I used to take in boiled sweets because you can kind of suck on them and they last for maybe 5 minutes or so, rather than if you take a whole bag of chewy sweets and you just eat them all, then you're going to be on a massive sugar high and it's probably not great. But I found boiled sweets are quite good because you can kind of they take a while to eat them. You're not going to eat 5 in a minute and then get a sugar high and then again a sugar low. So I find things like boiled sweets. Take nuts if you like nuts and things like that. They're always good for kind of keeping up energy over a period of time. And in terms of anxiety, the same thing I said in part 1 of this video. I think try and just calm yourself down, take a step back. If you have a real panic over a question, just take a step back. I find a lot of the time with the long exams, if you're writing essays, I think it's good sometimes if you, I don't, from my personal experience anyway, if I'm writing an essay and sometimes I'll think, oh, this isn't quite going in the direction that I wanted it to, take a step back, go and look back at your plan for your essay, which you should have made. If you don't plan for essays in exams, I would highly recommend it. Go back to your plan and take a look at it again and see where you're wanting to go, so you can kind of readjust the direction. If you start to panic about it and think that you're talking about the wrong thing, you can always kind of steer things back to the way that you wanted them to be. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for my tips for long exams. I think you need to kind of like take a minute. If you start panicking, just shut your eyes and take a breath and then go back to it. That's like my main tip for anything about anxiety, is just try and relax and then go back to it, rather than like panic and like trying to add more things in. I think it's just take a deep breath, shut your eyes and try and relax and drink a bit of water. Number 3, Joanna Harding from Twitter asks how not to get distracted. And when I was in exams, this is my number 1 tip. If you get easily distracted, take earplugs. Number 1 thing, every single exam, as soon as they said you may start, or like open the paper, start writing, whatever they say at the beginning of exams, I used to put my earplugs in and go. And then even though you can't really hear, like, it is a bit strange because in a way you're kind of aware of people around you but you can't hear them, but for me it is the number 1 best thing to stop being distracted in exams, because I am so distracted by people like tapping their feet or like breathing heavily or like shuffling. I can't stand it and it really puts me off. Number 4, Kel Santos Malari asks, what do you do if you forget an answer? Do you leave it blank or do you just guess? This is like such an easy question for me, because there's no way in any scenario that I would leave a question blank, because at the end of the day, like, you're never going to get marks for a blank answer. Like, you can't physically get any marks if you don't write anything. But if you write just like everything you know about that general topic, if you don't have a clue like what they're asking for and you just write kind of what you know, the chances are you're going to get like 1 or 2 marks for it, because if you know things that are like linked within the answer, then it's got to be there somewhere. So for example, I remember in my physics A-level exam there was one question that I just did not have any idea how to come to the answer, so I just wrote down like every equation that I knew that was to do with that topic and kind of like tried to come to a conclusion, and like it was basically wrong, but I'm pretty sure I got 1 mark for that because I had the right kind of idea there. But you know, it's always worth putting something, even if you have no idea, just make something up because you might get a mark. It's better than just leaving it blank, and you'll probably have the time to write anyway because they'll allocate the time for the exam, so you may as well. Don't miss out on marks that you might be able to cheat your way into, like by writing something random. Okay, number 5, Ali Malacha asks, how are exams at uni different than before? And I touched on this briefly in part 1 of this video as well. From my personal experience at least, I found that university exams are very much more based on knowledge and like a deeper level of knowledge. So a lot of it is what you've read outside of the reading list, kind of how you can link your thinking back to other people. This was something that it took me a while to learn when I was at uni, is that you never thought of anything first. Like at school you can seem to just write, I think this because this, and in your exams, and you can kind of come to your own conclusions. You don't have to reference anybody, whereas at uni the main difference is the fact that every like academic point that you make, you have to reference like where that came from or like where you've learned that from, and that's the main thing that it took me a while to get used to that at uni. The reading and then referencing the points that you've learned in the readings. It's a different style of learning, but it's definitely like once you've cracked how to do it, it becomes quite easy, because you almost think point reference rather than just writing kind of freehand like you would when you're doing your A-levels and GCSEs. So there's there's definitely a difference there. In terms of the learning, like it's a lot more independent, so it's a lot more independent reading. I think once you leave school and start uni, you realise how much you're spoon-fed at school to know like the exact like curriculum that you're meant to know, and you don't really learn much outside that at all, whereas at uni you're kind of actively encouraged to just go on your own and kind of learn different things that you're interested in surrounding the subject, and you'll get a lot more marks for that. Exams at uni, apart from that, they're pretty similar in terms of the whole exam format. There's nothing different. For me, at least, my uni exams were a much smaller environment, so there were rooms with, say, 50 people in, whereas my school exams had like 150 people in them. So they're a little bit less intimidating like that. like the size of the room is much smaller, so they're not as kind of scary. But in terms of the format, they're pretty similar. Like they may be a bit longer depending on what course you do, but that's pretty much the difference there. Yeah, so I hope that helped some of you guys who are doing exams at the moment or have exams coming up. I really wish you all the best of luck if you do have exams coming up, because I know it is a really nerve-wracking time, and I'm so glad that I'm not in that environment anymore and I don't have to do exams, because it's such a kind of stress. But always keep in mind the feeling of when you finish your last exam and you have the whole summer ahead of you. That is also the best feeling in the whole world. Like, nothing compares to that feeling of like, it's summer, yeah. And I wish I could go back to having that, like the end of hard work and the beginning of summer. So I don't know what that random tangent was at the end, but I hope you guys are all having a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!